table with some men with confidence.
And welcome to Men in Confidence Sharing, where we, the men of a certain age, share our thoughts, ideas, and opinions in confidence. Guess what? Your boys are back. Yes. It's been a long time since I left you. Without a dope rhyme to step to. Yes. We are here. We are back with another Open Mics podcast. I am your temporary host for today, Tony. You remember me, don't you? Once upon a time. But guess what? We have everybody here today. Everybody. We are like a good poker hand. We got a full house. 3 of a kind and 2 pair. We got a winning hand today. So we're going to go one by one. And we're going to say hello to everybody. Hello, Terrence.
I'm not a full house. This is 4 aces and a joker, so let's get it.
Hey, man. Hey. That's still a winning hand. Hello, Sean.
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing?
Hello, Rhino.
I know nothing about cards, but I do know that there's a rule in every card book, and I have that rule in my back pocket. So how y'all doing?
And hold up.
Here comes a new challenger.
We got a new player here today by the name of Ed. So Ed, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I wish I had some cool intro like everybody else. I'm not used to this, but hey, I'm the nerd in the room. So hello, everybody. Thank you.
You're the nerd in the room full of nerds. So welcome.
Full of nerds. You were in good company.
In perfectly. Form, feet, and legs. Mega thrusters are go. Okay, so today we are going to talk about politics. And I'm trying not to sing the song from Hamilton in my head. But anyway, we're going to talk about politics. Like, what are your thoughts? Not necessarily what are your thoughts on current politics. I want to hear about your political evolution in your lifetime. Like, what were you taught growing up? Let's start there. When you were growing up, what was your political belief system? I would say going from like childhood to maybe like young adult. Like, what did you believe then? And then later on, we'll talk about what you believe now. And I will throw it out to whomever wants to start.
Okay, so since we're back, I don't know how to not jump out and grab the mic right away. This has been a long time coming, so I got not a lot to say, but I'm just going to snatch the mic. What was I taught? First things first, not much. For whatever reason, it was just like, man, you go vote for your president, and that's it. It really wasn't a big deal. Wasn't anything that anybody in my household made a big stink about. It was just kind of, whatever. As I got older, high schoolish, middle school, high schoolish, you start to learn more about government and how things work a little bit, the 3 branches of government, etc. Okay, there's something to this. I might vote, I guess. It don't really seem to impact me one way or the other until, I don't know, maybe later in life, you're like, whoa, this actually does make a difference. And it's like there's an epiphany somewhere around 22, like, oh, shoot, I might want to do this. I might want to pay attention to who these people are. But maybe that's just me.
Appreciate it. Who wants to go next?
I got you. I'll pick it up. So, I'm going to mirror a lot of what he said. I remember not even really paying attention to, presidents and stuff like that on TV until Reagan. Reagan's campaign was the first campaign that I ever really even halfway remember putting down my fire truck to look up at as a kid. You know what I mean? And a lot of stuff had happened way before then. But all I knew was he was on TV, and oh, they're doing all this talk about him and he's the man. And you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be president. Get growing up a little bit more, and you find out that the folks that you think are in power are not quite in power. And I probably didn't find that out. For me, I'm pretty sure it was in high school. High school is when I found out, wait, I don't want to be president. I want to be a senator. If I'm going to do something, that would be where it's at. So like that was my bridge gap for me. Like that was where it was. Now, as far as like I said, as far as coming up or anything like that, my folks didn't necessarily have a big emphasis on, or I really didn't learn about one way or the other. Hey, vote, or make sure you don't vote, or you know what I'm saying, from that standpoint. Not to throw any kind of shade at the parents or whatever the case may be. It just wasn't a thing of the things they were telling me to do at those points in times as you were growing up. You know what I mean? It wasn't thrown at me quite yet to be like, hey, make sure you vote when you get there. You know what I'm saying, from that standpoint. So I had to kind of come to that of my own. And like I said, about high school when it kind of kicked in. We had a government and economics, Mr. Watson, in King Street Senior High, and I swear it was like that was revelations for me in some ways. Wait, so hold on, I got another question.
Eye opening,
right? Everybody groaning in the classroom like, this nerd just could start asking questions so we go. But yeah, that was my eye-opening moment. Was probably around high school when I kind of understood that. Yeah, this is something that is important, and and then of course they hit me with, hey, oh, by the way, you have to vote. You have to be at least registered by the time you turn 18. So you know what I mean. I figured that out from that standpoint too. It was like, oh, so does this mean I have to do it? Do I have to do it? You gave me a card. Is it say I have to do it? Now, that was a whole other thing, but we'll get into that in a minute. But that's my piece on coming to and how I kind of came up.
Appreciate it, Sean. All right. Who wants at it?
I'll go. Sure.
Go for it.
Whew. Well, I mean, how to summarize? So I grew up in a very, very political family. Like, I am what people would nowadays. I mean, America is a strange place. So I'll start by prefacing it with that. I would say I am what in America I would be considered biracial. So my dad is like old school European. Like his family, he can trace his family back to like 1300s. My mom, on her side, or one side of the family, she can trace her family back to at least the 1500s from Spain. And then the rest are just like pure Indian. Like they were actually rebels against the Incas. So when people think of Peru or South America, they're like, the Incas were the people. But the Incas had a lot of enemies, just like the Aztecs and the Mayans did. So when the Spanish came, that's how they conquered. So I come from that kind of lineage. So politics was all the time, all day, every day. So let's move on. So I was born. I was still born. I was born dead, technically. I was in an incubator for 9 months. I was born 7.5 months in instead of the 9 months, the gestation period. So after that, I was in an incubator for almost a year. And then I basically lived with nannies, and I went from children's hospital to children's hospitals because I was basically born deformed. I had little arms. My legs were all bent and twisted. My feet looked like fists. So I had to wear the Frankenstein shoes. Remember those kids? I was one of those kids. And then the metal bars to straighten your legs because I was bow-legged.
Oh my gosh.
So I lived in 3 countries between the time of being born to the time I was like 4 years old. So I was between Peru in South America, Spain in Europe, and then in France, in Paris. So Madrid, Paris, and Lima. And then I was finally allowed to go home. But, most kids have, they're breastfed or whatever. Anyway, I come home. I'm about almost 4 years old. And politics. So on the TV, it was the Iran-Iraq war. Have you guys ever heard about that? So
Yes.
Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons on the Iranians way back in the 80s, before anybody knew about, the last time that chemical weapons and biological weapons were used were in World War II. So, or World War I. So my dad was in arms all the time. Oh, these people, what the fuck are they doing? Why is the UN not doing anything? My dad has always been yelling at the UN since I can remember. He calls it a useless body.
Right.
It's not the UN, it's a useless body. That's what he calls it, UB. And then my mom, just always, kind of like frustrated and angry at the condition of the world. So my mom was a nurse. She joined the Red Cross when she was 17. So she was always been involved in like civic, duty to people. My dad was an industrial engineer. And although he worked for big companies, like Dutch companies, he traveled all throughout Europe, South America, Asia, improving processes and functions at scale. But he was always, you. And I was the middle kid. So I have an older brother, I'm the middle one, and I have a younger sister. So politics was always in the house. And on top of that, again, old families. And when old families get together, everybody's talking about who's in power now, because it affects their finances. A lot of people have businesses, or they're men of industry. So they have a voice in whatever's going on wherever. So it is interesting growing around, I guess, the circles of power, and then how they want to breed and kind of raise their children. So right off the bat, so we're talking, I'm home now, I'm 4 years old. By the time I'm 5, I'm already in kindergarten, and it's a boarding school. So I went to boarding school since kindergarten until I was in 5th grade. It's very different because what you're taught there is civic duty is the first thing. Country first. And if you have an old lineage, country, king, blood, God. It's an ethos. So there is always a sense of duty to the country and to the greater self, to the greater good than the self, despite your own family and your own kind of bonds. So this is something that is drilled. And so it's a Catholic boarding school. And I don't know if you're religious at all, but have you ever heard of St. Augustine or St. Francis of Assisi? These guys?
I have. Yeah.
So, Jesuits, Dominicans, Franciscans. Okay, so basically our traditions go back to these things, but I belong to a Catholic order, and even just by virtue of joining it and understanding its tenets, it's kind of how you're raised. So I am part of the Augustinian order from St. Augustine. He was actually what's called the first father of the church as we know it now in Roman Catholicism. So the entire tenet of it is duty to God, duty to the people, and vows of chastity and poverty and purity, which is obviously not easy to do. It's probably impossible. But he also differs between the city of God and the city on earth. So what we do in life should reflect our aspirations to the afterlife. So there is always a sense of civic duty involved, no matter what you do from small to large. And that's how I was raised. So basically, boarding school was almost like a military school, because you're raised to either be a leader of industry, a leader for the army, or a leader of research and science. You're not just going to loaf and make money. In fact, money is considered to be grubby and slimy. You have it already. Now you should do something with it. You've already kind of like evolved past that. So now you should do something that gives back.
Right.
Otherwise, your life is basically purposeless.
Interesting.
That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure, especially with a family of giants. I mean, again, a guy that's running industries all over the place, and then you grow up and it's like, you're going to be an engineer. And then you start studying with, so long story short, I come to America. We move here. He retires here. He started his job when he was like 19. He was 44 when we got here. I was only 8 years old. And, you're going to college with a bunch of like really brilliant people. And you realize that you might not be that bright. So what do you do here? And so that influences your politics too, because politics cannot just be up in the air. They also have to be practical.
Right.
And so that's where I guess my thing comes, but not to be so convoluted. But I think it needs to be prefaced. It does affect, because you want to be as fair as you can, but it does affect you personally, like Terrence and Sean said.
Mhm.
And yes, senators, great. That's a lot of money. That is
Yeah.
power, actually, and they have more say than a president. You know, a
Mhm.
president is
Exactly.
technically almost useless, like a
Yes,
king.
Pretty much.
absolutely. Yep. That's what I was
And
saying.
and we can get into all of those nuances later, but it's technically useless. But the senators, the magistrates, the lawyers, the courtesans, the court people, those are the ones that guide the direction of the kingdom, so to speak. And that's, I guess, technically what I guess people like me were raised to do. And it's not right, because in a democracy, and this is the one thing I'll bring up, one of the first things you learn is about the pre-Socratics and people like Plato. These guys over 2,000 years ago understood that the one thing that makes the world unfair is inequality. And Aristotle says it best. If you should keep people in a leash, because people need to be ordered in some manner or form. Because if you let them loose, they'll do whatever they want. Hedonism, drugs, booze, war, murder, rape, whatever. They'll do whatever. But you have to keep them in line. But how to do it, and how to do it fairly. Everyone should have a piece of the pie. And that is something that is very hard to do. But I was raised in that kind of tradition, that everyone should have a piece of the pie. And if you have the ability to give somebody a piece of the pie, they should have it. That's hello. That's my introduction to it. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for taking so long.
No, appreciate it. We may touch
Not at
back
all,
on a
man.
couple of those
Good.
things. Okay, so let's go to Rhino.
So my politics is a lot like yours. My for years I was taught to be I was taught right from wrong. My mother taught me to love God and to know Him and to trust in Him. So a lot of my politics are rooted in my belief in God. And my first introduction to life and politics was the day that Ronald Reagan got shot. Like, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I didn't know all the reasons why, but I remember that day. And Ronald Reagan was a beloved president during my childhood. He was my first president, that I could remember. I was born in 75. So as I grew older, I still hadn't really settled on a place in politics. I do know by the second grade, I knew that politics wasn't in the cards for me as far as me being a politician. I learned that very early on. I can explain later if you'd like, but I just learned very quickly that, yeah, maybe politics isn't for me. But it didn't really touch home, and things didn't really come to and I'm going to stop right here. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I just want to make sure. It wasn't really until I joined the military and I was stationed in another country. I was stationed in Japan, and I learned that Clinton was reelected president, and I was like, I didn't get a chance to vote. What's going on here? And for the first time, I felt excluded from my own country from voicing my opinion. And then I learned later on that it was probably in their minds for the best, because the person that they wanted to be in office probably wouldn't have been voted into office if they had someone like my vote, a soldier serving the country. And I get it, but also I don't get it. It kind of bothers me, because I'm like, shouldn't we all heard? And it wasn't until 4 years later, I was in seminary school, when I began to come to a realization that people all over the world, regardless of what their creed is, regardless of what their color is, regardless of their station in life, they need to be loved and cared for. And so, how I vote and my ideals, being an American, I felt somehow affected that. And so I slowly began to become uh, more politically aware and more concerned about what's going on in my world, and not just in my country, but in my world as a whole, and wanting to make sure that when I cast my vote, or when I make my say, that I'm doing it for the betterment of everybody, not just myself. So I'm going to go ahead and start there. But that was my introduction and then my arrival at politics. I'm not going to go into all the things that happen between um, different and various parties that personally I think is there just to divide us and to keep us subdued. But it is what it is. That's where I stand.
Appreciate it. I can hear the tinfoil, being shaped and formed, but it's all right. You can pull out your hat a little bit later.
Oh yeah.
There's a designated time for that. Okay, so let's talk about. Okay, so my political history. I am very similar to Rhino. I think it's very closely attached to my religious or my belief upbringing, being raised as a Christian. And I would say that as a Southern African American Christian, you already know what political area you're being pointed to. Like you are already in line. Like you didn't get a choice. You're already in line, and it's up to you to break away from that line if you choose to. I was not very knowledgeable growing up. I feel like that I was for everything, even if they weren't in agreement. Like, Tony, are you for abortion? Yeah. Are you for women's rights? Yeah. Are you for like
super positive guy? You want
Yeah.
to
Right,
in some place.
Right, exactly.
like are you for food stamps? Yeah. Are you for fiscal conservatives? See, yeah. Like, no. Like,
That's
all
when
of
you
that
started
sounds
running
good.
into trouble because you can't afford to do everything, or can
All
you?
of that sounds good. We can
Interesting
do it
question.
all. We can do it all. And I think that as time goes by, you grow a little bit older, you realize that you can't do everything. You can't believe in everything. That eventually you're going to have to make some hard line decisions. And I think and I try to explain this, but it sounds weird even when I say it. I feel like as I got older, my belief system became this. I feel like I'm a liberal, but I believe in liberalism in order for you to allow me to live conservatively. I need the freedom to live conservatively without reproach.
I hope we
If
touch
that
on
makes
that point more, because that's the crux.
if that makes any
that's going.
sense.
I'm sure we're going to dive into that, and that's where the rubber hits the road, as they say, because that's that absolutely right, Ed. That for sure.
So, question now, and make it. I don't want to go too deep, but where do you stand now in what you believe in, and like what's changed?
Well, first out,
And go for it.
I'm number one feeling a little small-minded in my political views, listening to the group, because a lot of where I stand and lean somewhat politically is kind of self-serving and somewhat, how does this benefit me? Or to a certain extent, how does this benefit my community or my people, so to speak? And I air quote it because my people could mean a number of different things. But I didn't think about things from a, how does this impact the world? Or how does my spiritual beliefs or my faith align with where I'm at politically? I didn't put that much thought into it because honestly, I think something of a religious trope impacted my beliefs with regards to politics early on. And it was kind of one of those imprints in a sense. And your vote don't count. It don't matter. It's one of the things, because growing up where we grew up to a certain extent, you were told to be in this line. But if you decided to step out of that line, because though we all grew up together for the most part, I was always kind of something of an outsider, and Sean might be able to identify with this some because we weren't natives. We always kind of had a little bit of a mindset of, well, we know this way of life, but we know something different too. And for that reason, we might have bucked the system a little bit and brought some of that outside edge to it. Like, yeah, no, I'm not going to, just total line because this, that, and the third. And yeah, I can see how this area might be a little bit jaded and want us to just kind of do as we're told or whatever. Nah, so I'm just not going to play this game. And I won't be involved with it at all because it doesn't really matter. Anyway, moving past that, how I formulated things and opinions on it now is still somewhat rooted in that. I have to think about the things that are going to impact me, my family, my community. What are the best decisions for, or whose platform aligns with things that are going to serve the community well, in my opinion. And that reshifts my focus because now I'm not looking at the bigger political sphere, the president or even the senators to a certain extent. It's like, wait, who's my city councilman? Who's the mayor? Who's the governor? Is there an alderman I need to talk to? Who are these people? Let's really get into this a little bit more. And based on those things, that has really kind of been more of a determining factor on which way or how I vote.
Okay, so I did have a plan, right, as far as going person to person, but you kind of threw a curveball in there, and this is an open discussion, by the way. So feel free to jump in at any point in time, with concern for the next person. Don't just talk over somebody. But you make me think about something because, like, when I was talking about when I was young and I was agreeing with everything, I think I was thinking along the lines of trying to be good and save everybody, right? Like, you're trying to be good to the world and trying to save the world, and you're trying to help every single person out there. And I wonder, as time goes by, does our vision shrink, right? Does our perception get smaller and smaller? Because I feel, and this is just me personally, like, I feel like I went from trying to save the world to trying to look out for my country to now I'm trying to look out for my household and my immediate family and friends. Like, that's more important now than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It's like my focus, it's like it went from being a wide spray of light to like a laser beam. Like, it's now focused on mainly my household. Like, I'm still for feeding the poor and helping the helpless and all that stuff. Like, I still believe in that stuff. But Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? What is in it for me in my household, like how is this going to affect us? And I don't know if that's a question, but you guys can comment on that if you like.
If I may, that is a question.
Well, that's a valid point. I mean, yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. You know, I'm at that place too, as a matter of fact, you know, caring for my household, caring for my sister. She, dare I say it, she has a peculiar situation that I don't want my government to just come in and say, oh, well, she's a lame, we're going to take her away and put her here. You know, I personally don't think our government should have that type of power. And so I'm constantly concerned about
You're muted.
Yeah, we lost you there a second there, part. Rhino. There you go.
I'm so sorry. Where was I? So yeah. I'm hyper aware of my household and what affects me and what my government is doing that could potentially affect me in the future in a way that I may not like. You know, because I'm quick to say, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for you. Who are you? Who lives in this castle? No one lives in that castle. You know, we don't have a lord. What are you talking about? You know, I want to be able to have a safe, secure life. I want to be able to know that we are free without somebody coming in and stepping in and saying, "Hey, yeah, you can't do that anymore." Yeah, that's against the law. Well, when did it become against the law? I don't remember voting for this. So I just want to be. I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to serve my community in the way that I can, and that I'm voting in a way that's going to benefit everybody in the long run. But at the same time, I want it to definitely benefit myself. I don't want any shenanigans from the past to come up and be a problem. Now, I don't want somebody to come in and be like, okay, well, I'm taking over this thing and I'm going to run it my way, and he ends up just being another Hitler. You know, I don't want that. You know, there's a reason why we study history, so we don't repeat it, and so we know what happens, and so we can track our progress to a better country and a better world. But you know, I'm starting to run away with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and end right there.
If I may, I think, well, the three of you have made great points. And as I was saying earlier, like, ideally, right, in an ideal world, all these conflicting ideals and pragmatic issues of daily life should meld together, right? We live in a technologically advanced society in the richest nation that the world has ever known. Why are we still having these problems, right? So it's a very convoluted thing. So on the one hand, yes, we want to help everybody. We have good values. There shouldn't be poor people. There shouldn't be people starving. There shouldn't be people getting murdered, raped. It should stop. And if there are people that do that, then they should be handled in a certain manner so it doesn't happen anymore. On the other hand, yes, things affect you personally, right? Not only it starts with you, the individual, the other people in your vicinity. So your mom, your dad when you're small, and then when you're older, your girlfriend, and maybe your wife, and then your kids, etc. Or maybe your nephews if you have siblings and you don't have any kids of your own, whatever. And it expands. When that expansion doesn't match your ideals and your way of life, how you behave yourself, right? Wanting that better society, then there is conflict. On top of that, now, as much as you can vote for whoever you think is the right person to vote for, are they really doing what is beneficial for you, or are they telling you what you want to hear? Those are two very different things.
It's so true.
Yes,
Oh my
sir.
goodness. Yes. So
And
Sure.
when is anything ever solved? So then we get into the other problem, corruption. I heard a lot of talk about God. I talked about my own upbringing, but corruption is not only in the soul, but it's also a pragmatic sense. People take money, and people, they don't necessarily lie, but they just won't tell the truth. And just because they didn't say it makes them not guilty, but they are guilty, right? So this becomes exponential. So from ourselves to the greater outside, how can we reconcile that? So Hitler's, for example, and talked about history. Just look at Rome. Look at Greece before it. There would have been no Rome without Greece. Greece fucked up first. People love Spartans. Rhino was a Marine. And Marines, and you too, Terrence. Okay, so you guys fashion yourself. Actually, the entire core is fashioned after Spartans. You even have symbols. Like, what happened to Greece? They fucked up because they became too militant. They destroyed themselves. Civil war. And then other people came and picked off the pieces. Look at Rome. They extended their reach too far. Too much. It went from a republic to an empire. And then big empire that divided got taken over. And the new people that came in, all those barbarians, took over, and they just adopted Christianity, not because they believed in God, but because it was a good system of governance and to keep other people just, villagers are villagers, they'll farm, but warriors fight, and warriors control and manipulate and administrate. It's not fair. That's the essential thing, that life is not fair. And so everyone should be watching their own house, but also holding other people responsible. When we all stop doing that, it becomes exponential, and then nobody can hold anybody accountable anymore. That's the crux.
Love it. Oh man, I like that, and I like the fact that Ed bounced off of, it comes down to accountability. So like, that kind of goes with my journey with coming back around to where we were starting with this, and kind of getting to where I am now, so to speak. But I'll say this before I get there. I was at one point where it was like I didn't even vote, because as one of you guys brought up, points, I used to think, it didn't matter. So I'm just not gonna do it. And for what? It's, basically, like the movie Brewster's Millions, vote for none of the above, none of y'all. That's where I want my vote to be at. I was absolutely with that. If I can't vote for none of you above, I just won't vote. But I got to a point where I realized it was important. Again, in the military, always, it comes into play. Those of us who were service members, there's nothing like being a service member, and it just, you have that, it changes sometimes your input on some things. Mine for this one was different. I was deployed overseas. I was, this was, we were talking later in life, not later, but, was deployed overseas about 31, 2, 3, something like that. And they had our absentee ballots when they were looking for us to, and I had kind of vaguely heard of absentee ballots, but I really wasn't aware of them. And that kind of brought me wholly into a thing where it was like, wow, this thing is serious. I might want to actually start voting, because if it's serious enough for us to be overseas and they want to have our input, they want to make sure we still are in this, that's important enough for me to do it, especially when I get back. But then, like y'all said, also too, I had in mind already also what Ed said, I want to be a senator. Forget folks. But it was also because when, taking a college course, a college government type course, and learning also about the Electoral College, and what that really was in a breakdown was that the people we elected on this lower level have a big say on the presidential level. So, because they're thought to represent who, what we want, supposedly, you know what I mean? These are folks we elected. They're supposed to know better than us. They get paid to be in politics and go, to our city councils and stuff like that all the time. So supposedly they represent what we want. And so when they go, even though you go and you say blue, they're like, no, he doesn't really know the whole deal. It's actually red.
Not
And
even
you're
purple.
going, how did that happen? I pressed blue. Everybody who was aligned with pressed blue, and it turned out to be red because of of the electoral college, and they supposed to represent us higher than us, which is
And that's
crazy.
the point right there, for example. It's not a representative, it's a representative democracy, not a pure democracy.
right. And so, and that's a good point. That's a very good point. I think where I am now, let me get to where I am now. Where I'm at now, again, I did not become a senator. I didn't learn that I didn't want to be a senator in second grade.
Yes. There's still time.
Yeah, no, I know, but no, I'm not. And now I know I don't want to even from that standpoint. I'm like, no. I may sound like that's still a motivation for me, but at this point, I'm even like, yeah, no, because I understand, like you guys said, it personalizes a little bit more. And when you start to kind of look, when you say, well, like Janet, what's been done for me lately? What is anybody doing to change these particular situations as we go along? My particular view, and it's not. I'm not red. I'm not blue. I'm, like you said, who's coming up with and who do I think is going to align and do the better job? In truth, not quite all the way the same as I was before, as in none of the above. But I will say that if I don't notice a change, I'm like a big, like, get them all out. If I'm going to the polls and I have no idea who you are and what you've done, it's the only thing I need to know is, are you the incumbent or the incoming? You're the incumbent. So you've been here. Got you. So I have your vote. I'm going in the polls right now. It's
So
the
you trying to
complete
drain the
opposite. You
swamp.
know what
I
I'm
got
saying?
you.
Yeah, get out, because I don't know who you are and what you've done. So let's try the new guy. I mean, I by their, that's an I, right? There's an I by their name. Next guy. Next guy. So if I'm not impressed,
Good job not getting baited, but yes.
You said not getting baited. What did you say? I don't think I heard.
I said you're a drain the swamp guy, and you just kept right on going. So continue.
Cleanse it all.
Yeah, right.
Get rid of all of them.
That's exactly it. Drain the swamp. But you know what? I can end there because we was talking about the corruption and those type of things, and I feel like that's what that goes to when everybody who comes in and wants to play ball, and it's kind of evident. You can kind of see it. It's like, I feel like if I had a dream that I did become a senator, it would be one of those things where it's like, they have so much stuff going on. I think there would be people coming to me and being like, you either gonna do this or, we know all
the
about
rules are
this
already
right
set.
Right,
You
exactly.
need to play ball.
You just got to play along. You know what I'm saying? And that's exactly it. So I'll put the mic down there.
So Sean, so let's look into the crystal ball, right? So if you ever do become senator, but you only get one term,
I didn't do anything.
you know that's karma coming back to bite you.
But it should be because
somebody's in the poll like, what, Sean got an eye beside his name. Forget that.
That's it.
Guy.
That's it. And
if
they don't notice any changes, I say strike it.
Oh my god! And when I think of the electoral college, I always think of history with like a snarky attitude, because I'm thinking like the forefathers are deciding like, okay, let's make this a democracy where every vote matters. Well, we could do that. Or how about this? So follow me now. Okay, so here's a statement to remember. People are stupid, right? And they do stupid things. So let's not give them full control. Yeah, our forefathers, 7 years ago, people are stupid. Okay, anyway.
Got no sense.
But just let's say I don't trust them, so we're going to put a buffer in between what they vote for and who actually gets chosen. Like they might just vote for some celebrity with their own TV show that happens to have a lot of money. Who knows?
You know, I gotta say something about that when I get a chance.
It's all right. It's not a shot, actually. It's more of it's an ironic twist. But I don't know if I have a direction after that. So we've talked about where your political ideals started, where they kind of at now. I don't know if I want to ask this question. Do you think it's possible to have an efficient, effective American government? Like, is it possible for the government to work, or is the government itself the problem?
It absolutely is. The question is, are the conditions there to make it happen? Stress always forces things to become more efficient. That's why, for example, capitalism works as opposed to socialism or communism. When you put people's livelihoods, for example, that's one thing we all can agree on. You start with your own self, and then everything expands outside of that. When everyone's livelihood is affected, let's say now the survival of the nation, it becomes in itself necessary for it to correct itself. And let's not forget, we are organic as any plant or any other organism. We are a machine that is very organic. It has moving parts, and the moving parts are people. To the point that you were making earlier about the forefathers or the college, what's it called? The voting college?
The Electoral College.
Electoral college, yeah. So remember, it was 13 colonies originally, and the South had more people, but the Northeast had more people than the Southern colonies. There were a lot of slaves whose votes did not count. So in order to represent the votes of those lesser, like, populated states, they needed that mechanism to make it fair. And remember, Washington himself, there were no set terms. Washington set that by withdrawing and giving up power to show that he was not a king. Because if you technically look at it, there is no difference between a US president and a monarch. They're both immune. They can declare war. They can open borders and close them. And they can declare states of emergency, et cetera, et cetera. It is the behavior of Americans in the Republic that makes the Republic what it is. And the Constitution, we don't serve the president, number one. We don't serve a party or whatever. We serve the Constitution. That's something that people don't remember very often because it gets lost in the message. So can the nation become more effective, more efficient? Sure. You just need to put the conditions there to make it so, like it was in the beginning. And as it struggled to find its own identity between the Civil War and the Revolution, and then afterwards, before World War I, we were isolationists until people brought us into the shit. And then, we were fighting our own wars here. They opened up a can of whoop-ass that they had no idea what they were opening. And look at us now. We haven't stopped fighting wars ever since. And nobody remembers that the longest war that America has fought was since the moment we landed on ships here from Europe. The American Indian Wars were 200 years. And they were at the bloodiest after the Civil War. When we actually, because in the Northeast, we killed the Iroquois, the Mohawk. They were easy. The only ones that gave them any trouble before we expanded west was near Louisiana and Florida, the Seminoles. Once we started fighting the Comanche, the Sioux, and the Lakota, it was hell. Immigrants were brought here from Germany, Sweden, Poland, all over Europe as a buffer, so the U.S. Army could build forts along the way. What does that tell you about the nation and its idea of correcting the course? So America for Americans kind of thing, but look, we're all American. And even me as a foreigner, for example, I identify with this idea of the Constitution. But stress has to force the conditions. When people get too relaxed or jaded, then it doesn't work. If everybody started not rioting, but boycotting more, stop using services, not even voting, and just making it crystal clear because the media, for example, oh, this is amazing. Is it really? I don't think the American populace agrees with half of the bullshit they say, but they also think we're dumb. So holding them accountable, that is our right. And like every vote counts. So every action in itself is a political action. But when people don't do it, then it goes topsy-turvy, and then they get away with whatever they want to do. That's all I gotta say.
Okay.
This is a side note, but I'd like to see the media monopolized or demonopolized. I'd like to see private media industries important things as they see it and not being owned by the highest bidder. I would love that because I think at that point we will start to see some real.
Do we need them anymore with the internet and YouTube and like podcasts? I don't think we need them anymore, to be honest with you. It's a fossil. It's a relic from the past. The press. Who the fuck gets a newspaper anymore? Oh, I'm sorry.
This is true.
Who gets a newspaper delivered anymore? Like you go online, you turn on your phone, you get your news. You go on Twitter.
True.
Right.
The press.
So sidebar, looking at a movie earlier today, and not the name drop, Fly Me to the Moon, right? It's a period piece from like the 1960s. And I looked at it and they showed footage of name drop Walter Cronkite. And the first thing that popped in my mind is like, we don't have any reporters that have that sense of aura today as like he had back then. Like, we don't have anyone like, okay, I know we're getting the truth from this guy. You know, it's Walter Cronkite. Okay, Terrence, you're making the I sucked on a lime face. So I'm gonna pass the.
I'm trying to remember his name. Oh my gosh, I can't. Lester Holt. Okay, sorry. Lester Holt gives me Walter Cronkite. That's why I was making that face. Like,
really?
Yeah, I kind of feel like of all the anchors out there, he's the one I feel will probably be the most honest. That's just me. Clearly, okay, I'm in the minority.
I feel like he's wireless to my Kool-Aid, but I'll give you that. Like
wireless to my Kool-Aid. Wait.
I don't even know what that means.
Like wireless was 10 cents. Kool-Aid was $4 for $1. You know, both of them were red and grape, but one was just a little bit more quality than the other. Like, and this is nothing, and we're getting off on a way tangent, people, but we'll bring it back around. Okay, so nothing wrong with Lester Holt. I like Lester Holt. Lester Holt's cool. I don't know if he has the prestige of some of his predecessors, and I don't think that's his fault because the era he's in is, and this is even worse tangent. It's like, it's hard for LeBron to get respect because of the era he's in, right? He's after Jordan, so it's hard for him to get the respect compared to earlier eras. But anyway, this is a total tangent. That's a total tangent. I'm sorry. I apologize.
We'll put a pin in that and maybe come back to that at a later time.
Yeah, that will be after hours on OnlyFans, you know, for $8.99 a month.
Not that you
real talk in confidence.
Not that you would know anything about that site, you just heard of it, right?
Yeah, never been there before, but please subscribe.
Wait, are we up there too?
We could be.
No.
We could be, man. We could be.
No.
We could be.
For the record, OnlyFans started out just like any other company where you can upload your videos and submit it to a limited amount of subscribers. It wasn't until recently that one dude took over and it became just a huge porn site. But
it can be clean.
You know, it is what it is. And not that I know anything about that.
You
can be
mentioned
clean,
having the
but-
rule book in your description. Way to pull the rules out and bring this thing back on track. Thank you, sir.
It can be clean, but if y'all want to pay to see my toes, they're available for you.
He's trying to get,
Not
trying to
the
bring
dog.
it back. Get off of this. We were trying to get clean.
All right. In the words of Hamilton, can we get back to politics?
There you go.
Please.
Please. Okay, so
Only been one. Good job.
ain't it though? I had like 4 of them before we even started. I'm glad you noticed that, Terrence. But anyway, so let's talk about kind of jumping off of what Ed talked about. Like, are we at the point where, and not we individually, but we as like a country, are we at the point where we just don't believe in our own system anymore? Like, are we that disgruntled to the point where the very citizens are the reason the system doesn't work?
It's
Okay.
a loaded question.
I'm going to say,
I think
yeah.
we're getting to that place that Ed mentioned. People are becoming jaded. And what does it take for evil to rule? For good men to do nothing. So as long as we continue down this jaded path, because we've seen it all, we've done it all. I mean, it's not like when we were kids, you know, the Shuttle Challenger, that was a huge tragedy. But there were a lot of tragedies that happened around that time, but that's the one that sticks out into our mind because we only had the TV news and the newspaper. Now we got the internet. There's tragedies happening all the time, and we're being bombarded with it all the time. So people are getting jaded. They are. And then we got the advent of AI. You can make President Biden and President Trump have a rap off because it's AI and it'll sound just like them. So we're getting to that place. It's just, I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to go into the castle and push the big red button. I'm sorry, that's a Red Player One reference, but you know, in the source code.
Do not push the big red button.
I'm not ready for the big
I
red
don't know. A hard reset might be necessary.
Don't push any buttons, big or red.
If we push that after the aliens come and get me or something.
Might be the zombies that come to your house. Like, we like your house and we like we like your fridge.
We at the Men in Confidence would like to make sure that we express that we are not advocating for the pushing of any red buttons behind of any of our presidents. This is not the opinions of, and we are not political stars, as we have said. We're not senators. We do not recommend you push any red buttons. We are red-blooded Americans who do not want to be blown up. Thank you.
The only red button we ask you push is to like, subscribe, and follow.
Thank you and good night.
Those
No,
on
just
you.
kidding.
You can push them all day. All right.
But fellas, I feel like the train is shaking and is about to go off the tracks. So I think we might want to go ahead and put a bow in it, wrap it up, and tie it up. I think we had a pretty good show. Anybody want to add anything before we cut loose and say goodnight? If not, I'm going to pass it to Terrence. Oh, were you about to say something, Ed?
I was just going to say that my only point was the press, I think, is a problem nowadays. Like we were talking about podcasts and, you know, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, social media, AI, as Rhino pointed out. You know, in the old days, there were hundreds of publications where you got news. When the news started getting, you know, conglomerated into monopolies, then it's one vision of what should be said and what should get distributed in mass proportions. Then it was TV. Well, before that it was radio, then TV, even before that, telegram. But now we're here. And there is a lot of misinformation. And AI is not helping it. I think and AI is making it worse. Now you hear fake history and it has videos and it looks real. You get pictures that are digitized and like they're talking about all kinds of nonsense that never existed, but people believe it because they see it in a tidbit and it appeases their, again, we were talking about our ideals, it appeases their ideals as opposed to what has been. And I think comfort makes people nasty and crazy because people are ultimately selfish. And as much as good as we want to put in the world, we cannot ignore the fact that we are who we are and that we need to fix problems. And there are a lot of problems that we need to face and not ignore. And I think all that stuff just makes it all weird. Like, you look at what's going on in the world, it's all lies. You look at the news about Russia, Ukraine. How is Ukraine going to win? Nobody's ever won against Russia. In 2,000 years, nobody's won against Russia in a war, land war. What are they going to do? So, and then you see the whole mess in Palestine, Israel. Now we had Taiwan and China. Come on. It's nonsense. And all you read is just, hurrah, hurrah, we're going to be fine. Let's be joyful again. Let's be happy. Happy about what? Higher taxes, inflation, higher cost of education, higher cost of daycare. Like nothing. There's nothing for us. Well, what are we celebrating? That's all I got to say on that.
Right.
Appreciate it. Were you about to say something, Ryan, or you were just thumbing up with?
No, I was just. Yeah, I was thumbing up.
Okay. All right. Well, fellas, I think we've had a pretty good discussion. We went here, we went there, we went everywhere and back. We touched politics, Kool-Aid, Lester Holt.
Walter Cronkite,
the forefathers,
Reagan
the Electoral College.
Which would have hit on Reaganomics. But I guess that's for another
man. Oh my goodness, that's probably a whole podcast.
It must be nice to have the Mennonites on your side. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and say good night, and I'm going to pass it to Terrence for the closing.
See, I was sitting here so proud, like so proud. We managed to do this and only have one till Tony made it two. But still, 2 Hamilton references this entire time. That's big for this group. Ed, you may not know what you stepped into here, but yeah, that's a big one. Anyway, I just want to take this time to do what we always do at the end of these and extend an invitation to all of our listeners to add to the conversation in the comment section. Let us know what you think, what your thoughts are on politics and the state of affairs currently. I almost said State of the Union, but I'm not going to do that. And as always, thank y'all for listening. Like, share, subscribe. Hit that big red button. Deuces.
Peace. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.